Hey guys, welcome to Dauphin Island. My name is Virginia Driscoll. You're here for our live video, Barrier Island Beaches. We want to thank the Dauphin Island Police Chief Claw for allowing us to be out here today to bring you this lesson. We're pretty close to our walkway on our beach. You can just kind of look over there and see we're not far from where we are supposed to be. The beaches are still closed. But we're here today to kind of talk to you about a barrier island. Dauphin Island is a barrier island, okay? And so we're going to talk to you about how barrier islands form, and then we're going to look around at some things that we see, okay? So first thing, a barrier island is an accumulation of sand that builds up over time. So you can look around us and see we have lots of sand to see. Our sand is made mostly of quartz, and we'll talk about how that sand gets here in just a minute. But so you need three things to make a barrier island. You need sand, you need wave action, and if you kind of listen close, we haven't heard this in a long time because we haven't been able to come to the beach, but you can kind of hear the waves crashing. It's a great sound. Anyhow, so we have wave action, we have to have sand, and then we have to have something called a continental shelf to make a barrier island. And they form parallel to the coast. You can see here's Dauphin Island, that's where we're at. Then we have, if you go further to the west, you have Petty Boy, Horn Island, Ship Island, Cat Island. You have some Chandeleur Islands here. Those are all the barrier islands here in the Gulf of Mexico, and they form because we have, I'm going to go to the next screen, or slide, show, page, whatever. Anyhow, we're going to go here. This is something called a continental shelf. And if you look closely, if you can see it, we have really light blue all the way around here, all the way around North America, right? And then if you move further out into the ocean, it gets darker. So this is still that light blue is part of our continental crust that is underwater, but it's very, very shallow. And so when we get our sand, it comes, and because it's so shallow, the sand is able to accumulate on it. Okay? So let's talk about how the sand gets here. The sand gets here because of our watershed. So if you look in the green, here, this is Alabama, right? Now, all of this in the green are our rivers, lakes, and streams that drain all the way down here to Mobile Bay. So we call this the Mobile Bay watershed, all of this, okay? So the Appalachian Mountains end right up through here in North America. So all of these rivers and lakes and streams that run through, they're eroding away the side of that mountain, and they are in the side of the riverbanks, and they're bringing that sediment and breaking it down, because water is very powerful and it breaks things down into smaller and smaller pieces as it gets down here, and that's how we get our sand. So Mobile Bay is not a beautiful emerald clear coast and body of water that you're going to see tons of stuff in. It's dirty. It's got lots of sediment in it. And so that sediment, if you can kind of over here, all of that sediment, this is the mouth of Mobile Bay where the camera is looking. So this is the east end of Dauphin Island, and this is where Mobile Bay drains out into. And then we have longshore currents that come to the island. You can kind of watch where the waves are crashing. And so it runs parallel with the island, and it brings all of that sand to us, that sand that comes from Mobile Bay. It brings all of that sand to our islands and further down past us to like Petty Boy and Horn Island and Ship Island. And so that's what builds barrier islands. So that is one of the reasons why you'll notice barrier islands don't stay the same over the years. If we were to pull it up on Google Images, you're going to see different looks of barrier islands as they change from year to year. You can go back to the 1700s and look at things that a map that was there in the 1700s looks nothing like it looks today, because barrier islands are made of sand. So what holds our island together? Plants, right? So we're going to kind of look at some of those things. You can look at our dunes here. So a lot of people like to walk on the dunes because it's kind of cool to make the sand fall, but it's actually really harmful because those dunes, these are small primary dunes, and they build up sand to kind of act as a barrier for our island, okay? And so you can see plants, like those are our sea oats over there in that dune, and they hold the dunes together. Sea oats have really long roots, and they help hold all of that sand together. But when you walk on the dune, you disturb that and it makes it fall down. If we look further past, we're going to go this way. If we look further past the dunes, you'll notice some more vegetation starts developing. So we get different sets of dunes, and they get taller. We also get trees that will grow, and all of these plants help hold the island together and make the island stable. When we don't have our trees and things to help with the roots that hold the sand together, we lose parts of our island when we have storms that come through. So let's talk about what a barrier island does for us. If we go back to this picture here and we look, barrier islands kind of act like speed bumps for the mainland up here. Barrier islands form parallel to the mainland, right? And they, when a hurricane comes or bad storms or even really windy days that create lots of waves, these islands take the brunt of all of that high energy coming off the Gulf of Mexico. So that helps the mainland from becoming eroded, right? So I want to look around and kind of just talk to you about some things that you'll see here on our barrier island. If you look way out there, you might see some metal structures. Those are going to be natural gas rigs. We don't have oil rigs this close to shore, okay? Straight out ahead of us is the Sand Island Lighthouse that used to be an island made of sand, but it was a barrier island and there is no more sand around it. That sand is gone and it has joined up to Dauphin Island during one of our hurricanes that we had several years ago. So now we have rocks around that to kind of keep it protected. You can see the rocks out here. We call those jetties or groins depending on how they're positioned in the water, right? So those jetties also help the sand to stay here on the island and not get eroded away as the waves crash. You can look at the birds. Barrier islands have lots of birds on them. They're coastal habitats for many types of animals, especially birds. I don't know if you can see how good, but we've got some cormorants out there. Those are the blackbirds. And we got pelicans and laughing gulls and all of those kind of things.
Rihanna, who's 6, she wants to know if there's something she can do at home to make sand.
What can you do at home to make sand? We all want to feel sand on our feet, right? But sand has to go through a really long process. To get it smooth like it would be at the beach, it's got to go through a long process of getting broken down and smoothed out by that water. So how would you make sand at home? I'm not real sure. You could probably find some soil, but I don't know that you could make sand at home.
And when we talk about sand, so the sand here is white, and I think what people will notice is that sand all over the place is actually different colors considering the beach that you're on.
It absolutely is. And sand is not only different colors, it's different shapes. You get different shapes because of the way that the sand gets to the island, and then you get different colors because of what it is, the mineral that it comes from. This is coming from quartz, and so quartz is a whiter substance, and so that's the reason our beaches get that sugary white look to them and super, super soft sand, because they've gone a long ways to get down here.
Quick shout out to Stacy. She says she's watching from St. Louis, Missouri.
Nice! That's a long ways away. Hi, Stacy.
Caitlin, who's 11. If the plants keep the island in place, how come it changes so much?
Because plants can't grow right up to the water. If you notice, there's not many plants further out past us, past where these dunes are. Plants need good, stable soil to grow in, and they need good water. Plants don't, this water that we're looking at, this is the Gulf of Mexico, and it's salt water. Plants don't like salt water. So because the plants can't grow all the way out to the shore, they're not there to help hold it together. That's the reason dunes are so important. That's one of the reasons why we need to stay off the dunes, is because they hold that area together. They help it a lot.
Kimberly asks, could the water erode an island?
Absolutely. During Hurricane Katrina, the storm surge and everything was so bad that it actually cut a hole in our island. We called it the Katrina Cut for a long time. That barrier islands actually heal themselves. I'm going to grab this before it becomes marine debris. Anyhow, barrier islands actually will heal themselves. Our island had a little bit of help, but yes, water can definitely erode islands. That's a great question.
Robin says, hey, from Georgia, and we have Adele from Tennessee.
Wow, we got some people from far away. That's awesome.
This is awesome. Adrian is watching from rural New York, and she says they wish we could wiggle our toes in the sand. We look forward to it soon. It
does feel pretty awesome. We will have to leave as soon as we get done with our video because the beaches are still closed, but I understand your pain. We are right here. We come to work and we look at the beach every day, but we still can't go on it. I'm sorry. Hopefully this will be over soon.
So when we talk about the jetties, so let's talk about Dauphin Island in general. So what we're standing on right now on the East End Beach, this is actually sand that's been pumped in to help expand this part of the beach.
It is. So after the BP oil spill, we got some money from that to refurbish this end of the island, because this end of the island had a really bad erosion problem. And so every bit of the island beach that we're standing on now comes from sediment that was brought from dredging, maybe dredging the shipping channel or dredging offshore and dumping that here. And so then they placed these jetties here to try to block the water from being able to erode that sand away, because that costs a lot of money. And so we don't want to watch all of our investment just move right on down to the islands behind us. If they were to dump that sand when they were refurbishing it too far away from the beach where it was too deep, the water's too deep, then that sand has no chance of building an island. It would be too deep. That's why we have that continental shelf, or that shelf is why we have barrier islands, because it's shallow enough for that sand to accumulate on and build up an island.
Poppy, who's 5 years old, wants to know if the oil spill, which was before she was born, has had any long-term effects on the beach.
So I wouldn't say we've had long-term effects on the beach here. They did a lot of good things to try to keep the oil from getting to the beach. We don't find oil on the beach, so I would say no.
When we talk about the natural rigs out there, so an interesting thing about those that we see off the beach, though, that's where our reef fish are.
Right. That's where we don't have coral reefs here in this area. Our water has got too much sediment in it to have a coral reef. So we get different types of reefs. We have offshore reefs that we have put there, artificial reefs, man-made reefs. But then we have rigs make great reefs for fish to be able to move around and hide. But so if you like to go fishing, most people know we like to hit up the rigs in this area or an artificial reef somewhere else. Our reefs here are made of oysters, because oysters like water that's got lots of sediment in it. They do better in that type of water. Coral likes clearer water for a completely different reason.
Ellen, who's 9, kind of going back to something we talked about, wants to know why the sand in California looks darker than ours.
The sand in California is going to look darker than ours because it's made up of different things. I'm not exactly sure what theirs would be made up of. I would have to go and study that. We have a couple of educators here that are from the West Coast. But their sand is coarser. It's not because it doesn't go through as long as a process of getting to the island as it does here. So our sand is a lot softer. But the reason the color is different is because it's made of a different material.
And fun fact, we do have some educators that have a sand collection.
They do. We have several of them. Sand is really, really cool if you can get it. Get some and put it under a microscope. It's awesome to see the different types of sand. So there is sand that I have from Japan that looks completely different. It doesn't even look like a ball of sand. It looks like a little creature with legs coming out of it. It's pretty awesome.
Rihanna, who's 6, she wants to know, so the rocks that we're looking at, she wanted to know if that's oyster, but that's not oyster, that's just...
Those are just big big boulders, big rocks that they've put there that are heavy so that the water can't pick it up and move it away. We want the rocks to stay there and block the water. They look white because if you notice there's lots of birds on them and they're pooping. Plus some of those, the waves at the bottom, you notice they're a different color. They're darker, so they're wet. But the longer the birds stay on them, the whiter they'll get.
Alice and Edwin want to know what lives in the sand. So what are some animals that we find along the beach?
We find all kinds of cool animals in the beach. We find ghost crabs. Those are those little white, they're not really white. They're more of like they blend in with the bottom. So more of like a clear, but not quite clear color that they blend in with the sand and they will move around and you'll see something moving out of the corner of your eye and it's a little ghost crab moving around trying to eat. Okay? We find all of the seashells that you find on the beach came from some kind of animal, whether it was a snail or a type of clam or an oyster. So those are animals that we find on the beach a lot. We find birds all of the time. The birds are eating little things out of the sand. We have like little small mole crabs, or some people call them sand fleas, I guess. Anyhow, we have lots of animals on the beach. Different types of crabs.
So Poppy wants to know if plastic washes up on our beach.
Unfortunately, yes, plastic does wash up on our beach, and sometimes it's not even washed up on the beach. It gets left behind when we enjoy a day at the beach, and sometimes people don't want to clean up after themselves and they'll leave their trash, or trash gets blown away. So that is a big problem that we encounter on the beach is, yes, we have trash that washes up, plastic that washes up. And then we also have people that leave their trash behind, which is a bad thing. We need to clean up after ourselves. We need to make sure if we're going to come here and be good stewards of the environment, we need to make sure that we enjoy it, but we take what we bring. And if you see someone else's trash, you need to bend down and pick it up, even if it's not yours, because that's not helping.
David, who's 10, he asked, what plants grow here? So what are these plants that we see in the dunes?
So if we look at them, most of the dune plants are going to be sea oats. Okay, so these here, those are growing, those are going to be sea oats. When you get to taller dunes, you get different types of plants that would grow, like seaside rosemary. Let's see.
What are some of the trees that we see?
Mainly the trees on this island are pine trees. Okay, we have different types of pine trees, but they're really good trees as far as withstanding fire. We have to have burns in the bird sanctuary to try to get rid of some of the growth that's there so that the trees can grow taller. And pine trees are really good at resisting heat.
And we'll wrap up with one last question from Paige. She wants to know what type of fish are around the island. So what can we find? We've talked about some of the further off. What can we find close to shore?
Close to shore, if we were to go seining, we're going to be having a marsh video that we post Monday about what a seine is and how we do that. And most of the time we use those in the marsh. But if we were to come out here and go seining on the beach, we would find little things like small anchovies, croaker. We find those all of the time. Spots that look very similar to croaker. Catfish, if you've ever seen the fish that's flat that looks like a little baby shark. It's not a baby shark, it's catfish, and its spines are venomous, and if you touch those spines, they would hurt. So those are the main ones that we see a lot of.
All right, well, Virginia, thank you. And again, thank you to the police chief.
Yes, thank you, Chief Claw, for allowing us to be out here. We've enjoyed being on the beach for this little short time, and hopefully we will get to bring you something else soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.